The Selfish Gene, Chapter 10, You Scratch My Back, I'll Ride on Yours, by Richard Dawkins. This chapter addresses the reasons why animals cooperate and generally live in groups. Dawkins discusses the concepts of symbiosis and reciprocal altruism and provides a possible explanation for the behavior of social animals. For animals that live in groups, the benefit to their genes must exceed the cost. Pack hunters, such as wild dogs, hyenas, or wolves, can score larger prey compared to lone hunters, despite the cost of sharing the food. Other animals, such as social spiders, build massive communal webs. Emperor penguins huddle together to conserve heat, or fish swimming behind other fish gain hydrodynamic advantages, like the aerodynamic advantages of flying birds in V formation. However, the most obvious advantage of group living is predator avoidance. In W.D. Hamilton's paper Geometry for the Selfish Herd, which he meant herd of selfish individuals, he proposes a simple model of why animals stay in groups. Assuming predators always attack the nearest prey animals at the edge of the herd will be at most risk of predation, or termed higher domain of danger, and therefore will try to move towards the center, the safer spot, so he or she is not the nearest to the predator. The constant migration towards the center will result in the formation of aggregations or groups. This selfish exploitation by individuals, however, does not explain why members of the group actively protect other members from predators such as bird alarms. At first sight, the act seems to be altruistic because it calls predators' attention by warning other birds. However, Peter R. Mahler noted that the calls are shaped to be difficult to locate. From a Darwinian perspective, the alarm calls become more numerous in the gene pool because it is passed to the bodies of individuals saved. Dawkins proposes two other theories. Firstly, the cave theory, cave being the Latin word for beware, illustrated by supposing a flock of small birds are feeding and a hawk flies in the distance. The member that sees the hawk can selfishly crouch in the grass, but the other birds would still attract the hawk's attention and endanger the flock and the individual. Instead, by warning the other birds with a call, this would be more effective in reducing the risk of danger to itself. Dawkins' other theory, the never break rank theory, imagines that a bird in a flock spots a predator and decides to fly off without warning his colleagues. He would be alone out in the open and increase his domain of danger, and this would make him more vulnerable to predation. The best policy would be to escape danger, but ensure everyone does it together. Therefore, uttering a warning call would be a purely selfish act, with E. L. Shanov and J. R. Krebs going further and labeling it as manipulation. Dawkins draws attention to the Thompson gazelle and its dotting behavior of jumping high into the air, seemingly provoking the predator's attention, which appears altruistic. Zahavi theorizes that the gazelle is exaggeratedly advertising its health and fitness, and dissuading the predator from wasting energy hunting it, and instead to hunt an easier and more unhealthy prey. The act is selfish because there is a competition to see who can jump the highest and not be chased by the predator. Dawkins explains the behavior of kamikaze bees who sting honey raiders but die in the process. Social animals such as bees, ants, and termites do not live as individuals because the germline of the species is passed down through a minority of reproductive individuals, the queens and the drones, while most of the workers and the self-sacrificing individuals are sterile. Individuality is achieved at a high level. The population can be divided into bearers and carers, which can be evolutionarily stable because they are close kins. In a sense, the worker are manipulated to ensure the gene is passed down by protecting and caring for the procreators and the offspring of its relatives. It may seem like the workers have a bad deal, but another perspective is that workers farm the reproductive and manipulate them to propagate more worker genes. Social insects such as ants, bees, wasps are known as Hymenoptera, where haploid unfertilized eggs or homozygotic fertilized eggs from inbreeding develop into male drones, and diploid eggs develop into females. Females can develop into workers or queens, depending on how she is brought up and the food she receives. As the mother only gives half her genes to her son, the queen would have half relatedness to the son, as it would be to the daughters. However, as the daughters inherit all the genes from the male father, relatedness between sisters is skewed to 3/4 and 1/4 between sisters and brothers. Evolutionary pressure would predispose sisters to farm their mother as a sister-making machine, given this is the most efficient way to propagate their genes, instead of breeding the offspring directly themselves, leading to pressure towards the evolution of worker sterility. The sister workers would also attempt to curb the mother's natural tendency to give an equal number of little brothers, 1-to-1 ratio, and try to shift the sex ratio towards 3-to-1 female-to-male ratio. In studies by Robert Trivers and Hope Hare on 20 species of ants, they indeed found a close fit to the 3-to-1 female-to-male ratio. Dawkins concludes that the conflict of interest seems to be won by the workers, unsurprisingly, given the workers have more practical power than the queen as the guardians of the nursery. Examining the opposite scenario where the queen has more practical power than the workers, Trivers and Hare investigated some species of ants that take slaves. The workers of the slave-making species are not good at working, but are specialized at raiding ant colonies of other species and carrying off the unhatched young. The captured slaves hatch in the nest of their captors, and although unrelated to the queen, perform the work for the colony, such as cleaning, foraging, and caring for the brood, while the slavers go on further slaving expeditions. Now the power of the nest is held by the slaves, programmed to behave in their own nests to achieve the 3-to-1 bias, but ineffective in the captor's nest to neutralize the countermeasures of the slave-making queen to shift the sex ratio in her preference, given the lack of selection pressure operating on the slaves. For example, in some species, queens attempt to disguise the male eggs as female eggs through smell, and natural selection would favor workers that can discern this disguise. However, in the slaves, this is not passed on. Trivers and Hare therefore found the ratio of the two sexes in these species approached 1-to-1. For honeybees, there seems to be a large surplus of males over females. Hamilton hypothesized that this was because when queens leave to start a new colony, female workers are lost from the parent hive. Dawkins mentions farming among species of ants and termites, specifically the parasol ants of South America that build underground chambers to cultivate fungus gardens. The ants chew leaves into fragments as compost for the fungus, and the fungus is harvested as food. The ants weed the gardens and remove other species of fungi, creating a relationship of mutual altruism. Similarly, aphids, greenflies and similar bugs are highly specialized for sucking the sap out of plants and excrete sugar-rich honeydew liquid. Ants milk the aphids by stroking the hindquarters. In this way, the aphids gain protection from their natural enemies. Ants are also known to care for aphid eggs inside their underground nests, feed the young aphids, and carry them up to protected grazing grounds. This partnership of mutual benefit between different species with different skills, ants' fighting skills and the aphids sucking, is called mutualism or symbiosis, and is common among animals and plants. The asymmetry can lead to evolutionarily stable strategies of mutual cooperation. For example, lichen is a symbiotic union between algae and fungi that cannot survive without the other. Likewise, mitochondria, the chemical factories within our cells that provides us with the energy we need, may have originated from symbiotic bacteria that joined together with eukaryotic cells early in evolution, according to the endosymbiotic theory. Dawkins challenges us to think about ourselves as a gigantic colony of symbiotic genes. Viruses may also be regarded as genes that have broken loose from colonies of survival machines, given viruses are pure DNA or RNA surrounded by protein jackets. It is therefore also true that we are colonies of viruses. George C. Williams concludes that species capable of recognizing and remembering each other as individuals can evolve reciprocal altruism. For example, if B has a parasite on his head, A can pull it off. When A has a parasite, he may seek B to return the favor, but B may simply refuse and walk off. B is a cheat and benefits from another's altruism, and would do better than indiscriminate altruists, the suckers, because cheats benefit without paying the cost of grooming anybody else. These represent two behavioral strategies, and we can assign payoff points like in the hawk and dove game. If we start with a population of half cheats and half suckers, the proportion of cheats will increase because cheats always do better than suckers. At a high level, say 90% cheats, the average payoff for both suckers and cheats will be very low, as both would be dying from infection, with a risk of extinction for the entire population. We can introduce a third strategy called the grudgers, who groom strangers and individuals who have previously groomed them. But if they meet a cheat, they will remember the incident and bear a grudge and refuse to groom them in the future. A population of purely grudgers and suckers do equally well and will be indistinguishable from each other. However, a large population of cheats with a lone grudger would not be very successful because it takes time for the grudgers to build grudges against cheats, while no one would groom the lone grudger. However, with a critical number of grudgers, there will be a higher payoff than cheats, and cheats will be driven towards extinction. Cheats can still survive as a minority because it is rare for one cheat to encounter the same grudger twice in a bigger population of grudgers. Grudges is an evolutionarily stable strategy against suckers and cheats, and a large population of cheats is also an ESS against grudgers or suckers. Dawkins mentions that isolated mice tend to develop sores on their heads that they cannot reach compared to mice kept in groups. A symbiotic relationship is also observed in large fish that open their mouths and allow cleaners, smaller fish and shrimps, inside to pick their teeth and clean their gills, despite the cleaners being the same size as the large fish's normal prey. Larger fish go into a trance-like state upon seeing the stripy patterns and special dancing displays of the cleaner fish and allow cleaners free access. However, small fish that look and dance like cleaners have exploited this behavior, and while the larger fish is in a trance, they bite chunks out of the larger fish's fin. Each cleaner has their own territory that allows larger fish to return, instead of the larger fish having to search for new cleaners each time. The tendency to return to a site is called site tenacity or site fidelity, and this enables the larger fish to avoid the cheating cleaner mimics. Humans have developed long memories and the capacity to recognize individuals. Therefore, reciprocal altruism would have been critical to human evolution. Shivers hypothesizes that human emotions may have been shaped by natural selection to improve cheating, detect cheating, and avoid being thought of as a cheat. Dawkins suggests that our brains and the ability to reason may have been evolved mechanisms to avoid subtle forms of cheating. Money, for example, may have been invented as a way to allow delayed reciprocal altruism.